Hi, I am Andi the Knittress, and this is my YouTube channel where I like to talk about yarn. You can find me on the internet as Andi the Knittress on Instagram and Ravelry. You can also find me as the Knotty Knittress on Instagram, Ravelry, Facebook, and my website, theknottyknittress.com. This is a special episode called Just Add Color. If you watched the first series, you would know that this is an experiment that I put together where I got several skeins from yarn dyers and as well as amateur yarn dyers, and kind of like a show and tell of different skeins and how they work. So the premise is everybody had to dye with the same 3 colors on a skein of fingering weight yarn, and I showed all of those skeins off, and this episode I'm going to show what they look like when they're worked up. So I hope that you enjoy what we're about to see. This is going to be a really good experiment, or rather a really good reference video for all of you who buy those pretty skeins and you don't know what to do with them because you don't know how they'll work up. Now, mind you, everything that I have done is at a specific tension with the same number of stitches. So what you get in your skeins, they would vary. But this will give you a general idea of how a skein that maybe is color blocked, how it would work up in a hat or a sock. So let's get started, and I'm going to go in the same order that I filmed in last time, and we'll start out with mine. So I am Andi the Knittress, and I am not a dyer. And as I spoke to you before when I showed you my skein, it didn't turn out what I wanted to be, but it is still beautiful nonetheless. So first off, I will show you what it looks like in a sock tube. Now this is a sock tube that I have cranked up on my Erlbacher Gearhart. It is a 64 stitch sock tube. There is waste yarn here. So this waste yarn would be unraveled, and then you'd pick up these stitches and knit a toe or a cuff in a contrasting color, or you could unravel a bit and use this same yarn to knit a toe and a cuff. You do the same thing on the other end, split it in half, do that again, and then cut in your heel. So this is roughly a 50-gram skein because it took 50 grams to make the hat. So this is what it looks like in a sock tube, and then this is what it looks like in a hat. Now this looks really small, but it is a 1x1 rib, so it stretches. I will show you here, and I will have pictures for each of these that I will pop on the screen. So this is what it looks like in a hat and a sock tube. Again, that is mine, and I am Andi the Knittress, and you can see how they kind of did different things. Overall, the hat kind of did almost a stripy thing. You can see the purple stripes, and then the green stripes, and it kind of looks like flashing or pooling because there's a few different colors of green, but when you look at it overall, you can see that it kind of has a pattern to it. Now these hats are 1x1 rib, 128 stitches. They were knit on my Erlbacher at half pitch. So next up we have Hailey. My friend Hailey is from Oregon, and she is an amateur dyer. She is new to dyeing. She has a podcast as well as she is on Instagram and Ravelry, and I will have all of her links down below. And her skein was a lovely skein, and this is what it looks like as a sock tube. Now you may notice that some of these sock tubes are different sizes than others, and that would depend on the yardage that was in that person's skein. Some of these skeins were 400 yards, and some of them were closer to 462 yards. So all of the hats used the same number of rows, and then the leftover yarn was put into the sock tube. So some people's sock tubes are longer than others. It just depended on their yardage. So this is her hat. I will show it to you on the head. And all of these hats could be worn as a slouchy hat, because you will see that I have them folded over. So there is her hat and her sock tube. Again, that is Hailey. She is known as Binky Bean on YouTube and Instagram. And again, everybody's links will always be down below, so I might not say it each time. But thank you, Hailey, for being part of my experiment. This really has been just super wonderful. All right, next up, we have Laura from Always Be Kind Yarn, and she is also out of Oregon. She has an online website where she sells patterns and her yarn. All of her proceeds, I don't know if all of them, but a lot of her proceeds she donates to suicide awareness and prevention charities. So that is really wonderful. And her skein was a gorgeous skein that was to micro stripe, and it did. So you can see here is her skein, and those big long color repeats that were in her skein created this lovely micro stripe. You can see this section here where it was the gray section with the multi-colors, and then it went into a green, and then a purple, and then a green again, and then into the multi section. So that did a lovely micro stripe. And then here is what her hat did. So you'll notice that, this is double the stitch count. So it did a really cool spiral around the whole hat. And I really like how in this section it kind of lined up all of the little speckles. And let me show this to you on the head. So we have this really cool hat. And then yet in a sock, it did this micro striping. So you can see that a skein of yarn, it could do different things. Now, if this were knit flat back and forth, it would do something different. So if you ever see a skein of yarn that kind of looks like this, then you know it will work up like this in a sock tube. And again, that is Laura from Always Be Kind Yarn, and all of her links are down below. Next up, we have my friend Amber. She is from Waning Gibbous Creations. She is on Instagram and TikTok. She does some commission crochets, and her skein was this gorgeous, lovely green that she called You Ain't Got No Alibi, because as I said in the previous episode, she wasn't extremely happy with it, but I sent her a picture of what her hat looked like, and she liked it a little better. So this is what her sock tube turned into. And you can see those lovely little flashes of that dark purple she had on the end of her skein there, kind of just travel throughout the sock tube. And then this is what they did in her hat. They ended up far more even, spread out, almost creating a striping look to this gorgeous, gorgeous hat. So let's show this to you on the head. Beautiful. And again with her sock tube. And that is Amber of Waning Gibbous Creations. Next up, we have Thomas from TH Handcrafts, and Thomas is Amber's husband, and he is he's got an Instagram that you can find linked below, and he does sewing, he does blacksmithing, and yarn dyeing, just to name a few things. So his skein was called Shadow Moon Valley, and I do believe that is a World of Warcraft reference for those of you who might be interested. And this is his cool sock tube. And I like that when I hold this at an angle, they kind of travel and go with each other. It's just really cool. I really like how that light green speckle kind of just stays together and travels around through the sock tube. So this is what it did in his hat. It kind of is a more even speckle throughout. You can, on the camera, you can see kind of it spirals around the hat, but in person, it's not as visibly noticeable. That darker with a gray and the dark kind of travel throughout. It's just a light, overall lovely little single stitch color. I think that is really cool. Let me show you what it looks like on the head. So we've got that lovely hat and the beautiful sock tube. And that is Thomas from TH Crafts. It might be TH Handcrafts. I may have written it down wrong. I will have it here correctly, and all of the links will be accurate down below. I can't necessarily remember everything correctly all the time, and sometimes I take notes down wrong. Anyway, next up we have Andrea the Cat Lady, and CATT is CATT, stands for Craft All the Things, and she is on YouTube. She has her own website, as well as she is on Ravelry and Discord, and everybody I list is on Instagram as well. And this is her skein, was a gorgeous skein, and it was called Lilac in the Storm. And then this is how it worked up in a sock tube. It's very even, just all the way throughout, kind of a nice, good, beautiful sock. And this is what it did on her hat. And for some reason, this is giving me Minecraft vibes. I don't know. I don't play Minecraft, but I just like it. I like it. Let's show you what it looks like on a head. Very beautiful. So as you can see, like different skeins, how they are dyed will behave in a certain fashion. And again, this one was Andrea, the cat lady, and she is from Michigan. And I forgot to say that Laura, Amber, Thomas, and Hailey were all from Oregon. And then Andrea is from Michigan. And then next up, we have Aquilla, who is of a Lefty Knitter podcast. And she is has a YouTube channel as well as an Etsy shop and patterns on Ravelry. And Aquilla's skein was a lovely skein that had the center was all green, and then the both ends were white, lightly speckled, and this is how that turned out. So as you can see, it did a spiral self-striping down the sock tube. And you can see here how it starts real thin as white and it kind of just spiral flashes and lines up down the sock tube. And it's just really lovely, that light speckle that she has. So if you ever see a skein that looks like that, know that in a sock it'll potentially do this. And again, I just want to say that it does depend on your gauge, and it depends on the number of stitches and everything, but it's definitely achievable if you see a skein that looks like that. And so now in her hat, it did a similar thing, just on a smaller stripe. So it's spiral striped around the whole hat, but not a drastic spiral like Laura's skein on her hat. It spiraled around the hat as well, just in a bigger scale. So this is what it looks like on a head. And then here is the sock tube. And again, that is Aquilla of a Lefty Knitter podcast, and as well as Instagram. So it's just amazing how all of these skeins were dyed with the same 3 colors and we're having such different outcomes. Each skein in itself was different. They all had their own personality, and they all work up differently. Next up, we have Jennifer from Barley, Hops, and Yarn, and she is in Maryland. Aquilla is also in Maryland. And Jennifer has a YouTube channel as well as a shop, and she has provided a discount code for my viewers, and that discount code is ATK10, and that is good through the end of 2022 for 10% off of your purchase. And I will have it written here in the little blurb as well as down below. And so her skein was a lovely skein, and I would call it just a overall variegated. I'd say tonal variegated because it was leaning towards the green side, but here is what it worked up as in a sock tube. Nice even. I would say pooling or coloring, but I mean, it's overall an even distribution of the colors. And then this is her hat. Same thing. You can kind of see with this video lighting a slight striping almost in those colors. Very subtle. Let's show it to you here. So again, this is Jennifer of Barley, Hops, and Yarn, and she is out of Maryland. Next up, we have an Oregon dyer, and she named her color Andi Says. I have an Oregon dyer that is local to me. It is actually local to this household and podcast, and that is Bobby of Hearing Colors Dyeworks, my husband, and his beautiful skein worked up like this. And he can be found on Instagram, and his yarn is for sale at aleftyknitter.com. I know we will have a few of these skeins available for purchase. So kind of did an overall even distribution of the colors, and the hat did just about the same thing. So let's show you this on the head. And the sock tube. So again, that is Bobby of Hearing Colors Dyeworks, and you can find him on Instagram. Next up, we have Michaeli of Breaking Yarn, and she is out of New Mexico, and she has her website, and she has her own patterns, and as well as a YouTube channel. And her beautiful skein also did a micro stripe. So you can see how we've got like one row of green and one row of the gray and speckles, and one row of green and one row of the gray and speckles. Sometimes it's maybe looks like two rows, but you can see that that is kind of just where it started to change colors again. So a skein like Michaeli's will turn into a micro stripe potentially in a sock. And then in the hat, it did a spiral thicker stripe. So very interesting. And I think that it's really cool how that works up that way to where it kind of just travels, and those sections of the gray and the sections of the green, they just keep meeting each other around in the hat and make it look like, you know, that this was a longer section of the gray and a longer section of the green. It was just the little sections and how they meet each other at this gauge. So let's pop this on here for you and show you. So again, that is Michaeli of Breaking Yarn, and all links will be down below for sure. I do encourage you to go like and follow all of these wonderful artists, and just, you know, have conversations, make friends, check them out. It's what our community is about, is just embracing everyone. The next up we have is Tammy of Cinematic Skeins, and she has a YouTube as well as a website, and her beautiful skein turned out like this. Just gorgeous. And see, when you get these overall even colorings in a skein, they would probably work up really well in a sweater, because in the hat it did more or less the same thing. It overall did an even distribution of the color. So if you were knitting a sweater with a skein that looked like this, and you alternated skeins, it would be an overall even color. And when you knit sweaters with variegated yarns, if you want to avoid weird lightning pooling, it is just best to alternate skeins as you go, or do helical knitting. And then you get a more even distribution of the colors for sweaters. And then you can have a sweater like the one that I'm wearing, which was a highly variegated yarn, and then you alternate skeins and it kind of breaks it up, and then you don't have any pooling. It's just an overall beautiful color. So again, that is Tammy from Cinematic Skeins, and she is based out of Texas. Next up, we have Coral from Rhode Island, and she is of Inkblot Yarn Co. She has Etsy and she is on Instagram, and her beautiful skein turned out like this. And this is her hat. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I've had too many interruptions. So again, that is Coral of Inkblot Yarn Co. And all of the links will be down below. And I just am having so much fun with this, and it was so fun to watch how these all worked up. Next up, we have Missy of Gypsy Yarns, and she is out of Ohio, and her gorgeous skein is on a sparkle base, and this is how it worked up in the sock tube. And this is how it worked up in her hat. Just lovely. Again, that is Missy of Gypsy Yarns, and I do have some of her yarn in my shop as well. There are a few skeins left of that. Next up, we have Chaille of Hens and Chicks Fiber Arts, and she is out of Michigan, and her gorgeous skein was on a zebra yarn base, meaning that the white yarn was plied with a black yarn before it was dyed. And this is how her sock tube turned out. And so the way that the black yarn is plied with the white yarn helps create stripes in a sock tube. And then this is her hat. So you can see that did a spiral stripe throughout the hat. And this is what it looks like on a head. Yeah. So that is Chaille of Hens and Chicks Fiber Arts, and she is on YouTube. She has her own website. She does sock machine demos occasionally, and I think she was at Rhinebeck and did a few. So just follow her and check that out. Next up, we have Dorthy of Knit, Knot, and Weave, and she is out of Maryland, and her gorgeous skein was just a lovely subtle color with grays and some light greens and a little bit of purple, and this is how it worked up, and I really hope that this is showing out true to color. It's just a very soft color, and you can see just little bits of the purple and the green in there. And this is her hat. Just a soft overall coloring. And let's show you here on the head. Just a lovely soft light green gray with hints of purple. And Dorthy has a YouTube channel as well as her own shop. And everything will be linked down below. Next up, we have Theresa of Pretty Twisted Yarns. Theresa is out of Florida. She has a shop, a website, as well as a podcast. And she dyes just a lovely array of color. And she's one of my very good friends. So maybe I'm a little biased, but I love hers. So her beautiful skein is a self-striping skein. And this is what it looks like worked up. And you can see that from the hank, all of the stripes were in that skein, kind of separated out. Overall, because self-striping skeins have to be rehanked. So when they're rehanked, you get to kind of see the striping that will happen. And then this is the outcome. Just gorgeous, lovely light speckles, and then did the same thing in a hat, just on a smaller scale. So fewer rows in the stripes there than in the sock tube. So we've got that. And again, that is Theresa from Pretty Twisted Yarns. Next up, we have Terry of Saltwater Indie, and she is from the UK. And her gorgeous skein was all over purple. And this is how it worked up. Very gorgeous, lovely, all over even coloring. And then this is how it worked up in the hat. You can kind of see a spiral stripe throughout. Let's show you on the head. And Terry has an Etsy shop, and she is on Instagram as well. Again, that is Terry of Saltwater Indie. All right, and then next up we have Stephanie of Blackbird Sycamore yarn. And her beautiful skein was just soft overall, lightly colored, And this is how it worked out. Just beautiful. And this is her hat. Stephanie dyes lovely colors of yarn. Check out her Etsy shop. She also has a YouTube channel. Stephanie is out of Wyoming. Next up, we have Amy of 3 Tulips Yarn Co. She is out of Pennsylvania, and her beautiful skein was also dyed on a zebra base, and it worked up like this. So you can see how that black section, where it's plied with the black, spirals around in the sock tube, creating striped sections. And then overall the coloring is kind of even behind that stripe section. And this is how the hat worked up. And that is Amy of 3 Tulips Yarn Co. And she has a shop as well as she is on Instagram, and she does yarn dyeing for fun. And I'm just overall pleased with how all of these worked up. It's been so exciting to have this experiment in color. I will be doing this again next year. I think it'll be a little bit earlier in the year, maybe not so close to my busy season, so probably thinking in the summertime. I will put a post out on my personal Instagram page, so if you are interested in joining next year, please just follow along. And I'm already thinking of some colors for next year, but we'll see if my mind's changed. I just think that this is a really good way for people to see how different skeins can work up differently. How even if you're using the same colors as other people, your input matters, and it's all got a one-of-a-kind touch to it. I have been blessed enough to be able to knit with lots of different kinds of yarn, so I generally know how things will work up when I pick up a skein in the store. I will unfurl it and I will look at the whole skein, and I know if I knit this in a sock, what it's going to look like for the most part, as well as if I did it in a hat, if I knit it back and forth, if I decided to do it in a sweater. So it's knowledge that I have because I've been blessed to be able to work with lots of different types of yarn. And not everybody has that opportunity, so I hope that this helps to show you that if you're kind of leery about buying a sweater's worth of yarn in a gorgeous color, you know, because you're afraid it will do some weird pooling, that maybe you'll, you know, take a peek and say, okay, well, I know that Andi showed me that that skein that had, you know, color block sections kind of worked up this way. And, you know, that other skein that was an overall variegated skein looked this way. So don't be afraid to try and experiment with your yarn and just, you know, have fun and support local dyers. And if you don't like it, you can always frog it. All of the participants in my experiment here will get this little goodie bag. Just Add Color 2022. It's got the 3 colors that we used this year splattered on there. So it's got the gray, the purple, and the green. Now, the gray kind of looks almost just like the purple. It's very hard to differentiate. But they will also get a few other goodies. I will show you again. I did show it on the last episode. They get this awesome progress keeper here and a really cool sticker and a button and a thank you card with a coupon code for my website. So I just want to thank you all very, very much who participated, and I want to thank you all for watching this, and I hope that you all go and support these lovely makers and make new friends and follow along and interact with everybody. Another reason that I did this whole experiment was to try and connect more people with other people. So like and follow all of these people. If they have a YouTube channel, think about subscribing. Just, you know, share the community and connect with more makers and viewers. Please don't be afraid to just add color and take life one stitch at a time.